What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the opening pair, Sports Zone Edition 8, as tonight we break down the main event of this weekend, UFC 261, all the way from Florida. But I cannot, as always, do it by myself. And as always, the illustrious Mr. Kyle Gavin is with me to go through it. Kyler, how are you keeping, Chief?
Oh, illustrious. That's very fancy. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much for that fantastic intro. No, I'm very, very excited for tonight. We've got a jam-packed show breaking down UFC 261 from Jacksonville in Florida. It's great. It's great to be back talking UFC. We haven't done it in a while. So
it's nearly a year to the day, and we were actually talking about these two guys in the main event back then as well, which is kind of everything has come full circle. Everything's come full circle.
Yeah, the location-wise has come full circle as well. If we go back to our first show that we did, it was the Veterans Arena in Jacksonville in Florida, but we've actually got a crowd now, so that's a massive caveat from our previous shows.
Definitely. It's great to have the crowd back. You know, whatever you may or may not think about the health measures in place, it's great to have something back for this. And it is a card that's worthy of a full arena, no question without that.
It is. No, it is definitely. As you say, there's definitely the need for that buzz with the crowd there. But hopefully this all goes well, and it's the future of all sports, not just MMA. But as you say, look, we've a lot to unpack tonight, and as good of breakdown artists we are with these things, we've needed a little bit of help. So, you know, I decided to call in a mate of mine. He's got a serious background in all things fighting, competes a bit himself, and is a massive fan of fight sports. So, without further ado, let me bring in Mr. Chris Gagg. Chris, great to see you. Great to see you. Thanks for coming on. How are you?
Okay, mate. Thanks for having me on. It's nice to talk about the other passion in my life other than football, which is all things fighting. So I was really pleased and honoured when you gave me the message, mate, and happy to be here. So looking forward to getting stuck into it.
And we are more than happy to have you. And it's great to take a pause from talking about football after the backlash, shall we say, I got from my opinions last week on certain Chelsea footballers. But listen, let's take a pause on that. Let's talk about UFC 261. Chris, take 2 minutes there. Talk to us about who you are and your background in terms of all this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know whoever might watch this might know that my original sort of first love was fighting. So when I was a kid, I did karate, Shotokan karate. I was all right at it. So I got all the way through to sort of black belt, fought for England, went across Europe having fights in Germany and stuff like that. I actually beat a German in a final, which was good. Wow. Doesn't normally happen for us Englishmen. So so I got to black belt, World European English champion across individual and team fighting. We call it kumite, team kumite stuff. So I did that for about 5-6 years as a kid. And then I sort of started getting into football, tennis, cricket and everything like that when I was sort of a bit later in life. So I came into that side of things a bit later. But I've always liked my boxing, always watched my boxing. And so I'm 36 now. I got it back into boxing properly when I was 30. So I just thought I'll give this a go, mostly for fitness. But then the old competitive juices came back in and I was quickly doing shows, white collar fights, which I haven't lost yet. So I've managed to come out unscathed after a few bouts, won everything. So, yeah. So I just love all things fighting. You know, I watch UFC, I watch boxing. Boxing is my main combat sport, but there's a lot of crossover, and there has been obviously a lot more crossover with the sports. In the professional world, you know, there's a lot of crossover interaction. Mayweather and McGregor was the big one, but you're probably going to see a lot more of that moving forward. And there's quite a lot of transitional things. So UFC is probably a good mix of my background as well in terms of what I've actually done. So it's and it's brutal, isn't it? It's like nothing else.
Yeah. Pure violence. That's what we want. Pure violence.
Yeah.
It really is. But it's all gripping. I'm never bored watching a UFC fight. I think boxing can get a bit mundane through the cards. I don't think you can ever really say that when you sit down and watch a UFC fight or a Bellator fight card. You know, they always seem to be action-packed, shot finishes and things like that. So it's a cracking sport, not for the faint-hearted.
No, definitely not. No, so there's definitely for myself anyway. I've never competed at all, but I'm a huge fan, so I'm really excited to pick your brain, get your views on I suppose an outsider looking in from a different discipline, so very excited for this evening.
Okay, listen, guys. Listen, we've patted Chris on the back enough. Let's get into this fight card. I wanna, let's move
put him to use.
Move this on. So I think, listen, let's focus on the main pay-per-view card. First fight: Anthony Smith, Jimmy Crute. Question I want to ask you guys, Chris, if I get your reviews first, is this a gatekeeper fight for these guys, for Jimmy Crute? Is this his way into kind of the top 5 contention, or where does Anthony Smith go? He's ranked 6 at the moment. I know, Kyler, you're not a big rankings guy, but listen, the rankings are there. We're moving with the rankings. We're using the rankings as we're discussing. What do you make of this fight?
Well, I think, you could look at Smith's record, and you could probably make the argument that it is a gatekeeper fight. But he's a finisher, so his fights, he either finishes or he gets finished. He's coming off a decent win. He's got some form. He's got some good wins on his record. He probably wouldn't be too happy about being called a gatekeeper. I think he probably sees this as a legitimate chance to put himself back in the main picture. I think Keith, you touched on it, his ranking is 6. You're not there by accident. No. You're going to have something about you. And it's UFC records. They're not always taken into account, just specific their UFC record. It goes across their whole career. And, it's easy to take a loss. So I wouldn't pay too much attention on that record either. I think I'd be more looking at the form, the momentum, what are the fighters saying? And I think it presents an opportunity for both of them. They're both. I mean, it's going to be a blockbuster one. I think it's going to be a really good firecracker of a fight on the main card, because Crute's done 9 out of the last 12. He's finished as well. So we're talking about some serious firepower between the two of them. It'd be easy to make the argument that it's a gatekeeper fight, but I don't think Smith would see it as that. I think he would see that as his probably last chance to make a final push towards greatness. And I think he's going to go into that unloading everything he can. And I think it'll be an absolute belter to get everything started off with.
Kyler, talk to me. What are you thinking?
Yeah, look, Chris has touched on a lot of interesting points there. This is, for the UFC, it's their basis how they start a main card fight. They will start with an absolute firecracker. And as you say, both men are coming for the finish, really. Jimmy Crute, 25-year-old Australian up-and-comer, coming off some really, really solid wins against fellow prospects, I suppose you want to call it that. Anthony Smith, for me, is a very interesting one. He's a very well-known face around MMA. He works with ESPN. He's on the desk. He's a name. He's fought for the belt. He's fought John Jones. He won his last fight. And again, it was very similar to this in that it was seen as a gatekeeper type situation, a younger fighter up and coming. But he got over the line. For me, I think we spoke on this yesterday, Keith, and I think it's actually somewhat of a win-win for the UFC, because if Smith does what we know he can do, he's as tough as old boots, can just grind out anybody. Great, they have that name back in the top 5 as a contender. The 205 isn't exactly the deepest division at the moment, but if Crute wins, it's sky is the limit. It's a new market with Adesanya, Whittaker, these guys coming through in Australia. They had an event a few years ago, Adesanya, Whittaker, 55,000. If they can bring another name to the table with that, absolutely amazing. So it's win-win, cracking fight to start off an unbelievable card. And it's really just it's one to really look out for when we get this card going.
Okay, lads, who wins? In one word, who wins? Chris?
I've got Smith to win by KO.
Ooh.
Kyler?
Ooh. I'm going Jimmy Crute by finish here.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm on the fence, so let's leave it at a tie across the three of us.
Interesting, yeah.
But listen, I've got hot opinions for later on, so don't worry.
Good.
You get something out of me later on.
Yeah, good.
So we move on. Uriah Hall, Chris Weidman, former champion Chris Weidman, former big contender Uriah Hall. Again, this kind of has a similar sort of vibe to it, but I think sort of the question I posed to you, Kyler, is this a last chance saloon for either one of these guys to have a real run in the division?
Yeah, it definitely is. I think that really assesses everything here. This could actually headline a fight night. You know, it's a massive fight. It's a massive fight. But both of these guys are big names. Essentially what it boils down to for me is it's your classic grappler versus striker. Uriah Hall was considered the next Anderson Silva. Chris Weidman, a former champion at 185 pounds. You know, he's the All-American wrestler. Striking is pretty decent. He trained out of Ray Longo's gym. Recently, he's moved to South Carolina to train with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, one of the best strikers in MMA, really.
That's an interesting move.
Yeah, the reason he moved is he's married to Stephen Thompson's sister, so
that's fair enough.
Yeah, she put the foot down and said we're moving, but look, it rounds out his game quite nicely. The other major aspect for me is with Uriah Hall, and it always has been the case, is his mentality. You know, when he gets to this big stage, and you know he's right there on the door of greatness for that belt, he crumbles. And I think when you bring that up against Chris Weidman's style, his experience, it's a very, very interesting recipe, and I'm genuinely this to me is the underdog fight of the card. You know, it's not getting much attention, but it's a quality fight.
Agreed. Chris, Kyler's made a good point there about the mentality of a fighter. As a fighter yourself, like, what's the kind of the ups and downs you kind of go through in kind of fight week, training, knowing that you got something coming up? Like, talk to me about that. Talk to me about the mind of a fighter.
Yeah, well, fight camps are the hardest things. The easy thing is actually turning up on the night. And because there's nothing really left to do, everything's done, everything's prepped, all the tactics are over the line, and it's just about your mentality on the night. So your mentality on the night is almost separate to the fight build-up. The fight build-up is important, and sort of how you've experienced camps it is important. But, you know, there are classic cases where you can have an absolute shocker of a camp. Everything can go wrong, and it just clicks on the night, and vice versa. You know, you can have some of the best camps you've ever had, and you just get knocked out straight off the bat, and it's like, what's gone on here? Really, you have to separate the two. They are two completely different mindsets. Some people just live for the big occasion; they live for fight night. And you know, I think the crowd's coming back. You touched on it earlier. It's a massive thing for all these fighters, because it's been so long. Since coming, you know, from nothing or minimal crowds, because there has been some, to full house. It's that extra buzz that you will get, and that extra sort of vibe that you're going to get on fight night is going to be it's going to be an unknown for both of them. It's going to be a real unknown, because they will be tapping into previous experiences and trying to, you know, use that to G them up, or it might intimidate them. You really don't know. But you can go through a full range of emotions in fight camp, and mentality is probably one of the biggest things in a fighter or in a fight. Sometimes you see fighters beaten before the first click, the first round. They're not right there, or you can tell if somebody's really pumped up, and you see it in the face-offs. You hear it in their interviews, their demeanor. Those big fight vibes and those big fight occasions. Sometimes you can tell a fighter's bluffing it a little bit, or they don't really believe it in themselves. So it'll be really interesting to see how they're walking in on the night. The ring walks, it's a lot of pomp and all of that, and it's their little moment. But you can really get a real feel, I think, from that ring walk and the moment they're in the ring, and if those eyes are locked on. And I do agree with Carl. I think it's the closest fight on the card. I really struggled making a decision on this one. It really could go either way. So I think you're going to be looking for the small margins. It will be the small margins in this fight, and it will be everything. It will be the mentality. It will be the weigh-in. It will be, they will be getting little wins from there, because that will add to the fight night motivation. So it'll be a really interesting watch, and sort of seeing how those boys sort of come into that octagon. Yeah, really good, really interesting fight, this one. You're going to ask me who's going to win in a minute, aren't you? And I'm still not decided.
Well, listen, I'll go to Kyler first. Yeah. Give me a prediction, Kyler.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there from what Chris said. Actually, I'm actually just sitting here and fascinated and knowing what he's saying, and it's actually touching a lot of what I've always found important myself. I love, from experience, Keith, how much I love watching the face-offs and the weigh and stuff like that. I love that kind of stuff. It's just fascinating. But to me, the huge aspect here is that this is actually a rematch. And Chris Weidman actually, in 2010, on the regional scene, knocked out Uriah Hall when both of them were up-and-comers. So, the old saying goes that once you've seen the darkness of a KO, that never leaves a fighter. And we've already touched on how Uriah Hall mentally is fragile enough. Plus, Weidman has been at the very top of the mountain. So for me, when you add all of that up, I can't look past Weidman. Now, don't get me wrong, Weidman has had his bad knockouts in the recent past, but when compared to in this scenario with these two fighters, I can't not pick Chris Weidman to win by decision here for me.
I'm actually going to take Weidman also. I'm going to stay off the fence on this one. I think that while both lads are coming off a win, I think Weidman had a better win, and he's potentially in a better frame of mind coming into this fight. This was meant to happen at UFC 258 and was called off due to COVID. I wonder, is that going to be a factor? But if it's not, Chris Weidman's my pick. Chris, the other Chris, talk to me. Who's winning this fight?
Yeah. I don't know. It's the form. The thing that was edging me towards Hall is the form. The form of him is better. And I think I'm right in saying that Weidman's on a bit of a after he dropped the title, he's lost 5 out of the last 7.
Yeah,
that will play on his mind. Yeah, that's going to play on his mind. And Hall's coming in on good form. So you've almost convinced me to go the other way. I was going to say Hall. And I was using the form as my main motivator, but you've really kind of pulled me back. I'm going to stick with it because I'm going to give Hall a bit of prop. I'm going for Hall here by decision.
Yeah,
okay,
I like
2-1 to Weidman on screen. And listen, let's just take a second before we move into these 3 title fights, and just for everyone watching on the replay, if you could please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment afterwards, let us know who you think is going to win these fights. But without further ado, the first of 3 amazing title fights this weekend: Valentina Shevchenko, Jessica Andrade. Kyler, talk to me.
I'm having to take a moment here because this is just phenomenal stuff. Valentina Shevchenko, outside of Amanda Nunes, is the absolute GOAT. Honestly, any up-and-coming fighter, whoever is, be male, female, whatever, take notes from this lady. It is MMA perfection. It really is. She's a Swiss Army knife. That's why I always describe her. She has the answer for every problem, basically. These with her and her sister Antonina are both ranked in the UFC. They live fighting. Their mother is a world shadow boxing champion. These people are the definition of bred to fight. Having said that, Jessica Andrade, former champion at 115 pounds, she's 5'1" 1.5 inch rather. But she hits unbelievably hard. Look back at the fight with Rose Namajunas, where she just basically picks her up and slams her onto her head and knocks her out.
Yeah, it was just massive KO.
Terrifying. What it really boils down to for me is this really the first test for Valentina at 125? This division was basically created for Valentina. She has cleaned it out. The fact that it's Andrade's only 2nd fight in the weight class and she's already fighting for the belt kind of says it all. I'm not sure if I'm being overly confident in saying it, but we've never seen Valentina hurt or really troubled. A little bit in her last fight, she was taken down by Jennifer Maia and sort of controlled for 2 or 3 rounds, but then we just seen her figure it out. Yeah. So I think the clinch game for Andrade, who, as I said, is extremely strong and powerful, is going to be where this thing is won and lost.
Fair enough. Chris, talk to me.
Well, the phrase that I wrote down when I was thinking about this one for Shevchenko is this is a gut check fight. It's her gut check fight. She's not going to face anybody quite as powerful as Andrade, and Carl made a really good point at the end there, and I'd made an observation. If this can be fought up close, it's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens, because the power, in the clinches and, that Andrade carries, that's her fight. If this is fought at distance and it's fought with technicalities and, the technical skill, which Shevchenko can do, the beauty about her is she can do everything.
Yeah.
And she can do everything really well. It's not like her technical side is stronger than her striking side or vice versa. They're equally as good. So it's a question of, can Andrade get up in her face and not give her a minute to breathe? Because as soon as she does, Shevchenko will work her out, and I can see it could be quite a comfortable and easy night. But it will be really interesting to see if she gets caught with some heavy hits and how she takes them. Does she eat them? Do they give her a bit of a wobble? How does she cope under pressure? How does she cope hurt? These are all the things that need to be asked by these superstar fighters. We've seen it over the years. Yeah. Tyson was holding through people. Then all of a sudden he got caught on his whiskers. They don't like it. Yeah. Yes, she is. Shevchenko is a fearsome prospect. And I think most people, if you were just to make a quick prediction, you'd be saying Shevchenko for the win. Yeah. However, if this fight doesn't go the way that she wants it to, and if Andrade can get up into her, don't rule out a big shock on the night with some heavy hits and heavy shots. So I think it's going to be an absolute cracker. Just 2 elite fighters is everything that you want on a fight card, isn't it? So I'll be looking forward to this one big time. And
is that the only way that we see Andrade winning, is getting up close, kind of like landing bombs? Is there a ground game we can work with? Kyler, you're saying that Shevchenko is like a Swiss Army knife, but what happens if one of those sockets kind of don't come out? What happens if the toothpick isn't there? Like where can this be lost for Shevchenko?
See, the interesting caveat, and just listen to Chris there, and I'm actually quite keen to pick his brain on this. The interesting caveat for me is the only time we've ever really seen Shevchenko in trouble is when she's outside of her own division and she fought Amanda Nunes at 135 pounds. So there's clearly a size advantage there. Like, as I said earlier, this is Shevchenko's division. So, yeah, I think you hear the fighters talk about the snap on a shot. That ability to land a shot. It's not just raw power, which obviously Andrade has, but she also has speed. It's that shot that you cannot see, you can't prepare, you can't brace for. That's the one that catches you. So Andrade has that ability. But the question I'd like to put to Chris is, as I said, we've seen Shevchenko in trouble against Amanda Nunes at 35, but this fight's at 125. So obviously, there's not a size advantage for Shevchenko, but with that weight cut, if Andrade does catch Shevchenko, will that extra 10 pounds that Shevchenko has now cut, the lack of that to absorb the shot, how much of a factor do you think that could play?
It could do. I think it just depends on how the weight's been cut, mate, to be honest with you. If it's been done steadily over time and in the right way, she's probably going to be okay. But if it's been a struggle cutting weight, this is why it's admirable and dangerous at the same time to go up and down through divisions. You see it with a lot of fighters. It's not easy to put your body through that stress. It puts it through a lot of stress and work rate. And that's why it's always best to just stay in condition rather than balloon out of condition and then get back in, and because you put your body under a lot of strain, and it puts a lot of muscle fatigue into you. So I would imagine that she's probably cut it in the correct way, and it doesn't feel or sound like it's been a tough cut to make. It was probably more of a problem for her putting the weight on than it was to get it back. If this is her comfortable fighting weight, she probably struggled to put the weight on and make good use of that, I would say, more so than coming back down. So as long as she's done it in the correct way, it shouldn't be a problem. That being said, and as you quite rightly said, you get caught with a snap short range punch which is loaded up with power. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good your camp's gone. It doesn't matter, if you're feeling the best you've ever felt. If you get caught with one that you don't see at close range with plenty of power and plenty of snap, you're kissing the canvas. So there's just that risk always. So concentration is going to be the thing. I think, as long as you can see everything. It's always the shots that you don't see, or always the takedowns that you're not seeing. They're always the ones that will be fight ending or put you in a position where you're having to, hold on. So as long as she's not Oh yeah. Well, you're feeling everything. There's no padding. You're going to feel every bit of that, and you'll feel the knuckle probably as well. So it is good night for you. If they get caught.
It's a bad recipe.
It is. It's a recipe for disaster. But I think she'll probably be okay, because I think in the manner of which she's cut the weight, to your question, I think she'll probably be all right on that side of things.
And Kyler, I want to actually ask you a question that may or may not be a factor, but in this week's Embedded for 261, Valentina said that they've been in Florida for a few weeks, while Jessica's only kind of landed this week. Is that sort of acclimatization? Is that, and should that be a factor for fighters? Like if I'm used to kind of the time over in the last 10 days, as opposed to kind of getting used to myself over 3 days, and that's the weigh-in, and then it's the press conference, and then it's the fight. Like, is that a factor, or like are these guys just pros and it shouldn't be a factor?
I don't see how it couldn't be a factor, because if you look at it, most professional athletes are creatures of habit. They like to know this is going to happen now, and this is going to happen, and this, they don't like change. They don't like unexpected disruption to the routine. So, to answer your question, I don't see how it couldn't be. It's definitely in a high pressure fight as it is. The less distractions that you can have, the better. So, it definitely is. And coming from Brazil as well, it's a long journey. It's the language barrier, all of those things, they all have to add up. So I would definitely say that it will play a role, especially given, as I said, the task in front of Andrade is great enough as it is. So to answer your question, I would be a little bit concerned. Again, as we've spoken on earlier, you'll see these things in the build-up, in the face-offs, at the weight cut, all of those things. That's where this would really show.
Okay. Right. Let's get down to the hard questions again. Chris, and new or and still?
And still.
Kyle?
I think it's Shevchenko's fight.
Yeah, I agree. I think we might see Shevchenko challenge a little. It may not be her regular performance, but I can't not go with Shevchenko here. Shevchenko for me. I actually think she might finish it.
I actually have her down to finish this one as well. I think that there's a lot of this hype that Andrade, this kind of knockout artist, I think she's going to end up getting knocked out, which will be kind of an interesting sort of story, kind of moving forward.
Easily,
Grant. So we're all saying Shevchenko on this one. So let's get into the co-main event. Zhang Weili, Rose Namajunas. Kyler, you're huffing, you're puffing, you're blowing. Here, go on, let it out.
This is the best fight at 115 that could possibly ever be made. This is skill versus skill, the very best against the very best. I don't even know where to start. Really, I'm so
pick something. Start with 1 point and let's build on it.
I think probably the big thing is, we spoke about it actually just in the previous fight, is that Weili, we've seen her in her last fight against Joanna, and the damage she did to her was absolutely outrageous. I mean, ridiculous stuff. But the thing was, that was actually the last fight in front of a crowd. And obviously, Weili is based in China, and she, on the Countdown show, spoke to how she had to literally go from the middle of a session in her camp, to run to the airport, to get to Thailand, to then quarantine, to do all that craziness, and still put on a performance like she did against Joanna and won what was considered the best fight of the year. So I'm now trying to add up in my head, like, well, she's now got a proper camp. There's a crowd back again. She's had full time to prepare. What is she going to look like when that's the case? So that's something I'm excited to look forward to. Excited to see what she produces, really.
Chris, build on that for me. What's your initial thoughts on this fight?
Well, I was doing a bit of background reading because originally I was just thinking I can't see anything other than a particular way that this one's going to go, and it's not even close. So I was looking for reasons to make a case, for Nama, and I don't know if you boys have picked up on it, but it was the narrative about the struggles in Lithuania, the Cold War, anti-communism stuff, that just screamed to me. That is somebody that is looking for every little inch of advantage. Anything that she could do to get in the head, unsettle, psych herself up. It's a self-motivating thing as well. She's trying to tap into something here, because she's going to need it, and I think she knows she's going to need it. It's almost got that sort of Rocky versus Ivan Drago kind of feel to it in that sense. There's some real looking for anything and everything to make a case for yourself beyond the obvious talent that she's got. It's not like she's some damp squid that's just coming in to get ripped apart. But I was just looking for a way to make a case. Because if it does work, it could be an absolute masterclass. It could be a hell of a strategy.
Kyler, I know you've got thoughts on this whole political angle that Rose kind of bring it in.
Yeah, I picked up on this as well. I think I actually tagged you, Chris, and I just thought that's a weird take on it. So like we're both thinking the same thing. I found it. Yeah, it definitely is. It's an angle that she's trying to create. But see, the thing about Rose is she's had these mental fragilities in the past. Like on her night, if she shows up, technically, pound for pound, she is absolutely the best in the world. Like she can just absolutely outskill anyone, everywhere, on the ground, on the feet, everything. An interesting sort of caveat I think Chris might appreciate is that actually Mike Tyson has backed Rose Namajunas to win this. And there's a little bit of back and forth now between Rose and Weili, and Weili has come out today saying Mike Tyson knows nothing about MMA. He's not going to affect this fight, So it's getting a little bit, So these mind games are starting to ramp up a little bit. The question I would have is, aside from the language barrier with Weili and how much of an effect that's going to actually have, is I was watching Weili's camp on Countdown, and the thing that I actually wrote down in my notes was she strikes me as the Chinese Katie Taylor. She has this huge following behind her, the first ever Chinese champion in UFC history. She has so much pressure. She said herself on Countdown that the Chinese media are now paying her huge amounts of attention, when they never would have in the past. So that surely has to translate into her game and into the build up. And she is the big name. She's carrying that huge contingent behind her. So yeah, like there's just so much to unpack here. I'm so excited for this. I'm on the fence. I don't know. I can't pick. I don't know who to go for here.
Well, listen. I'll give you a few minutes to get your thoughts together. So, we kind of looked at this from Shevchenko's point of view in the last fight when we broke that down.
Yeah.
So, Chris, where does Rose win this fight for you?
Well, she's coming up against somebody that can literally do it all again. To be honest, I don't think she does. That's my gut honest feel here. I don't think she does. Really hard for me to come back. I think the only way she's going to be able to do this is if she just catches her, just out of nowhere. You see it happen sometimes. It's just a mistake, and she times it perfectly, and then she can get the job finished. I think the things you were touching on there about the pressure of the nation and all of that does weigh down. Zhang will come apart at some point in her career. It's when, because you can't keep all of those plates spinning, and the longer you go on an undefeated streak, the harder it becomes. The more it becomes a thing, the harder the opposition becomes. So there are those factors in the background that that she'll be bringing into every single fight. So I guess if from a mentality point of view, there's something in there. If she slips, I think it would just be about how well she capitalizes on any mistakes, and can she get the job done off the back of that. But unless there isn't a mistake, I can't see it myself. I think Zhang will win comfortably. I think it'll be a good fight for as long as it's going, but I don't see it going the distance.
Yeah. Okay, Kyler, you've had a few minutes there to gather your thoughts. Give us your verdict.
Yeah, as I said, look, I've really battled with myself back and forth on this one. I completely agree with everything Chris has said, that Wiley can literally do it all. We've not seen much of her on the ground in an offensive mindset. And I think that may be a little chink in the armor that, she can, once it goes to the ground, Namajunas definitely has the advantage. It's obviously getting it there is going to be the problem for Rose. The thing I keep coming back to is when Namajunas first fought for the belt against Joanna. And Joanna was, at that time, even more of a favorite than Wiley probably is for this one. And Joanna kind of come in with this bully mentality, and again, if you watch back the face off with Rose, she's saying the Lord's Prayer as Joanna roars into her face. It's absolutely fantastic. But the thing as well for me is with Rose is that Pat Barry is her fiance and her chief cornerman. And she's also got Trevor Whitman in there as well. So it's an elite corner. But the relationship with her and Barry is fascinating, because she's made a statement in interviews in the past that no matter where she is, who's in the crowd, whether it's full, empty, or otherwise, she can hear his voice straight away and act out what he does. So I'm gonna go with Rose to win this one.
Okay.
I just think she has that underdog mentality, that there's no pressure on her, not as much pressure on her as Wiley. She's done it in the past. She's held that belt. And yeah, I think actually Rose could finish this. I can see Rose finishing this fight.
Do you think kind of shades of Joanna 2.0 sort of?
Yeah, I do. It just keeps sticking in my mind. As Chris has said, like, Wiley is on this. She's 21-1 in her career. She's never really seen that negativity of a big loss. And she, like, even if she does lose, she'll come again. She will come again. But no, I keep going back and forth, and I can't look past Rose.
Okay, I am gonna go with Zhang Weili. I think there was enough in the Joanna fight that proved that there's the elite, and then there's her. And while I think Rose is the best of what's in the division to face, I think that the Zhang Weili is just that little bit more. But I think it goes 5 rounds. I think it goes to a decision. Like, I don't be surprised we get another fight of the year contender this weekend again. Definitely, but listen, we've made it 40 minutes. We've talked about the 4 fights beforehand, but let's talk about this main event, the rematch between Kamara Usman and Jorge Masvidal. The one thing I want to open this conversation with is, we've talked about Anthony Smith earlier. Smith and Masvidal have similar kind of records. So in a way, there's a kind of a thread from the start of the pay-per-view card right to the end, that, you know, on another situation that this doesn't happen, or maybe Jorge is on the card but he's number 5, you know, that sort of kind of outlay, if you will. But I think how we got here is really, really interesting. Obviously, everything that happened with 251 last year, meant to be Burns pulled out due to COVID, 6 days notice. Obviously, Kamara gets the job done. Jorge only wins 1 round across the 3 judges. We move on, 258. Usman takes out Burns in the 4th round, and then calls out Jorge and just says that, listen, I don't want to give this guy an excuse. I'll give him a whole training camp. Chris, how much of a difference is 6 days to 6+ weeks going to make for this fight?
Big difference. I think you're almost to the point where you have to forget what happened in the first fight, to be honest. It will be, not to say that the result or the outcome won't be the same, but in terms of, you know, what a full camp can give you in terms of what you can bring to the fight versus 6 days, it's massive. It's huge. It can be, you know, it can completely change the landscape of a fight. So yeah, almost ignore that first fight. I think, you know, and I can see why both people want this, because, you know, Usman doesn't want to have that excuse hanging over the record. So he wants to go and finish it, and, you know, and Masvidal wants a full fight to show that, you know, give me a full fight camp against this geezer, and I'll send him into La La Land. So yeah, I think it's going to be really really interesting. So yeah, to answer your question there, Keith, it's going to be a massive game changer. It will completely change the landscape of the fight. You'll probably see a completely different type of fight to the first one as well. So probably almost be unrecognizable in that respect, I would have thought.
That's fair enough, Chris. Kyle, what's your initial kind of thoughts of this fight? Where's it going to go?
I have zero interest in this fight, to be very honest. That's my hot take. You know,
when you say you've no interest, do you just feel that this has kind of come together as a cash grab, or what's the reason behind you not having any interest?
It's a complete cash grab. That's what it is. Like, this fight was added to the card. This was always going to be the 2 ladies' fights, and then this was just thrown on top with 6 weeks' notice. You know, regularly a fight camp is 8. Look, it's a lot more than 6 days. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't see this fight going any differently. You know, like, Usman it's getting better. If anything, he's getting better. He really is. You know, he's with Trevor Whitman. And his striking, as we've seen in the Burns fight, has just gone through the roof. The only thing I'd say is, potentially, he's obviously his wrestling is his main
forte.
Trait. Yeah, and he might fall in love with the stand-up. You know, like the old saying goes, the wrestler, when he starts to knock people out, oh, this is easy, I can do this all the time, until you meet the wrong customer, who potentially could be Jorge Masvidal. I have to disagree with Chris slightly in that I don't see it going a lot differently. I actually think, if anything, the fact that Usman called out Masvidal says a lot. You know, he's been in there with him for 25 minutes. He's felt this power that Masvidal has always spoke about. We've seen him knock out Darren Till and Ben Askren. You know,
let's not talk about Ben Askren, please.
yeah, he's had enough. He's had enough this week. But, you know, we've seen that, and I know this is the saying that, you know, Masvidal took the fight on 6 days' notice, but so did Usman. Usman was preparing for Burns, who would have, you know, been a grapple-heavy style, whereas Masvidal is all about striking. So, look, yeah, I'm struggling to have interest. Obviously, I will watch. I'm not going to not watch. But I suppose, actually, the one thing when Chris was speaking, and I'd like to actually get his view on this as well, is that hatred factor of your opponent. How much is that needed? You know, I think we've seen it even with McGregor in his last fight with Poirier. He was Mr. Nice Guy, and a lot of that's kind of gone down to, well, was he too nice and this sort of thing. there's a real hatred between these two with Usman calling up Masvidal. How much of a factor, Chris, would that play?
It depends, really, mate. I think some people need it because that's how they get up for it. Some people fall into it, and they can deal with it or they can't, kind of thing. So I guess it really depends on. And I'll be honest, I don't know the two well enough to know if they fight with anger the whole time. If that's their thing. If that's their thing, then it's a normal mentality for them. If it's a rivalry that has built, off the back of all of this, and it's taken a while and stuff like that, it could mean more to Masvidal in that respect, because he would have been thinking about nothing but this. Whereas, Usman's, like you said, he's gone on from strength to strength. This has almost become an irritation for him because he keeps hearing about it and that kind of stuff. So there's almost two different factors here. One guy's eating, sleeping and drinking it and thinking nothing else. Or the other guy is kind of like, well, why is this guy's name still around here? I'm going to have to go and spark it. So, the anger can come from two different places, I guess. And that's where, the hatred. So it's a difficult one. You see these rivalries. You saw the White Joshua rivalry. I think that's a real pure hatred from the pair of them. That's a different type of anger and a different type of hatred. I think this one's almost been born out of frustration for one and, an obsession for the other. So it can mean that Masvidal maybe overcommits, maybe just thinks, I'm just going to come in here and just overthink everything, or I'm going to try and, clean this guy out, and, it ends really quickly. So what I mean, when I said earlier, I think this fight will be completely different. I just think the style of the fight will be completely different. I don't think it'll be a technical victory as it was last time. I think we'll see something a little bit more because of that hatred factor, because of that irritation. I think they're probably going to be a little bit more willing to stand and trade. Which will make it a bit more of an interesting spectacle. Everything on this tells you it's an Usman win, and it's an Usman win comfortably. And as you said, his striking game is really ramped up as well. So if it is a standoff, that's for Masvidal, that isn't an advantage necessarily, because he's just as likely to catch one on the chin as he is to throw one on the chin. So I think it'll be an interesting thing. It is a driver. It's just how they channel it and how they use it. If it's sort of like the red mist descends, then it's a hindrance. If they can channel it in the right way and they can really zoom in and do the confidence and the concentration, it can be an asset. So it really depends, mate. It really will depend. And again, I don't think you'll see that until weigh-in fight night. And see the mentality of them when they actually step in.
That's really interesting, kind of like an analyst of that kind of piece, Chris. I'm just wondering, Kyler, so like in 258 main event, Burns kind of walked Usman down and cracked him in the first round, wobbled him a bit. Like, I feel like Masvidal's got a stronger punch to him. Like, if Usman goes the same road, is he potentially biting off one punch too many?
Yeah, there definitely. It was a little bit surprising to see Burns drop Usman, but the thing is, and we've seen it in the past as well, is Burns had the threat of the takedown. So when any fighter is facing another takedown artist, the first thing he'll do is he drop his hips back and his chin will come forward. So therefore, it's a lot easier to land. Whereas in this contest, Masvidal will not threaten the takedown. He doesn't want anything to do with grappling with Usman. He just doesn't. So Trevor Whitman, being the coaching genius that he is, he's going to say to Usman, chin, protect your chin. Hips are not a problem. It's your chin we need to look after. Because to be fair to Masvidal, being the BMF champion and what have you, he has won big fights. And he has that unexpected, explosive knee, elbow, whatever you want, whatever weapon he can call upon. He does have that ability to do it. Again, I suppose the big thing as well for me is the camps, because Masvidal is from ATT and his head coach is Mikey Brown, who we've seen put together a fantastic game plan for Dustin Poirier against Conor McGregor. So, they've had this length of time now. They've had this 6 weeks to plan. They've been in there together. the huge fascinating thing for me is the head coach, who comes out on top of the coaches. So, and Chris, for you being actually in there with a coach, how much of a role does a coach and his game plan, how much of a role does that factor into things?
Huge. So my last, obviously I'm nowhere near the level that we're talking about here, but my coach for my last fight that I had in 2019 before COVID sort of happened, there was a very clear game plan that we were working on, because I was fighting a southpaw and I'm an orthodox technically, but because of my martial arts background, I was more than comfortable switch hitting. So it was more a case of keeping that quiet from the opponent. And it was a case of don't show him anything in the switch hitting in the first round. Let him think you're going to fight him orthodox for the whole fight. So I did that. And there was, there's a couple of thousand people in this place, so it is loud. So you're listening for your coach, and you'll be surprised. Afterwards, your mate's like, "Did you not hear me shouting at you?" I was like, "No, mate, I didn't hear anything." But the only person I could hear was my coach. And it's that time before the fight, it's that time during the rounds, it's that instruction in the fight, because they see things that you don't. And as long as you're listening and you trust them, it's a huge factor. And when taking it back to my personal thing, in that second round, he said, "Come out southpaw, come out for the second round southpaw, and then start switch hitting." And I caught him completely off guard, and that game plan just worked. The first round was quite tight, but I pulled away in that second round, and that's the game plan working, and and just listening to the coach at the right time and trusting it. And I think if you've got that trust, you see it a lot of times with fighters. Coach will say something, fighter ignores it, it's gone.
Yeah.
Because there's not that trust, and you think, well, what if you spent 12 weeks working on for if you're not going to listen to him on the night or her on the night? So it's massive. It's a massive thing. And if you've got the right people in the corner and you trust them, and you've practiced and you've drilled it all the way through, and execute the game plan perfectly on the night, it can make all the difference. It's a really big factor going into a fight.
Yeah, it's a very interesting. Actually, the word that really caught my attention there was trust, because Usman has changed coach. He was with Henry Hoof as Blackzilians, and now he's with Trevor Whitman, whereas Masvidal has been with ATT and Mikey Brown for as long as he's been a professional, as far as I know. So there is that natural connection that no matter what Mikey Brown says, he will do it to the T. Now, I'm sure Usman will as well, but there's obviously still a growing period there for Usman. But I suppose, Keith, you're kind of the
fanboy.
The fanboy, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, the fanboy. Fanboy. Having heard all this kind of technical talk, and what's your sort of takeaways from everything you've heard here?
I think, listen, that there's an awful lot to unpack, and we could be here for another hour kind of unpacking it. Ultimately, I think that there was a really funny meme that was done at the start of the year, which was it was McGregor loses, Izzy loses, Holland loses, Buckley loses, and Usman is entertaining. What is going on with UFC in 2021? And I think that what Usman showed in 258 against Burns really, really just kind of, he was a guy that, the jock sniffer style, as Conor called them at the 246 presser. But he's more than that. He is striking. There is more in it. And I think what he did was, in 251, he negated whatever energy Jorge was going to have on the 6 days. And I think we're going to see a wider range of skills. I am wary of if he goes and he faces Jorge down and gets clipped the same as what Burns did to him in the first round, that it could be a little bit worse off. But if you're asking me what my opinion is, I think Usman wins. I think he wins in the fourth round. I think he stops Masvidal, and I think that the crowd is going to be going bananas on this. I think the Just Bleed guy is going to be in the crowd. Everybody's going to be there. But I have Usman stopping this in the fourth round. But Chris, talk to me. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I've gone the same as you. I've gone Usman with the KO victory. After trying to make a case for Masvidal throughout all of that, getting Gav to disagree with me.
Yeah,
we all think he's just going to go one way. I just can't see anything other than that. I think he's a class act. So I think the crowd are going to eat it up. They're going to love it. Blood will be spilled in the gladiators
It will not
ring,
be bad
and they're
blood. It will not be bad blood.
It most definitely will.
Kyler, I know you don't care. Go on, give us a prediction.
Yeah, so I'm trying to weigh it all up, but Masvidal is just so tough. We've seen him go through everything. You know, he cut 30 pounds in 6 days' notice to fight Usman the first time. I don't see Usman stopping him. I see it being a wide decision for Usman. I think Usman pulls away as the rounds go on, maybe getting very close to finishing him, but just not quite pulling it off. The one caveat that I will add to it is, if you're looking for like a sneaky fun bet or whatever, I have a sneaky suspicion of potentially Masvidal going for a knockout round one. Come running out with that knee. He's got nothing to lose. He's been in there for 25 minutes with Usman. He knows what that feels like. I'm really excited to see that first minute, 2 minutes of the first round. You know, if anyone could pull it off and do this, the unthinkable, it is Jorge Masvidal. But no, if I was put to it, I'm going to go with Usman by a wide decision.
Okay, so that's all three of us again for all in agreement, which is nice to have. But listen, I think that's going to kind of wrap up our kind of preview of UFC 261. Chris, I want to give you a couple of minutes to talk about who you are again, what you're doing, and where the people can find you on social media.
Oh yeah, well, you'll find me. This has been a nice welcome distraction. Actually, you'll find me on Twitter. You can see there at Chris Gagg. Basically, being a Chelsea pest, Mason Mount fanboy, and trying to be sensible, trying to keep my cool. But yeah, you know, I'll talk boxing, I'll talk UFC, but Chelsea Football Club is the passion. But you know, I try and make sure that I interact with anybody that makes the time and effort to post with me or make a comment with me or anything like that. So you know, if you do want to speak to me more, you will be able to find me on Twitter. That's kind of where I am. Other than that, I'm out playing football and boxing and coaching football and squeezing in a bit of work here and there, lending some money to whoever needs it and that kind of thing. But yeah, that's basically me, boys. Just a normal guy, tells a few jokes and loves his football and his fighting. That's it.
Chris, it's been amazing to have you on for this episode. Really, really do appreciate it and hope that we can have you on again in the future. Take care, my friend, and mind yourself. Absolutely. As always.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, take it easy.
Kyler, another show in the can, and listen, couple of hot takes, a couple of agreements, but listen, good conversation, good kind of opinions all around the table, and it's great to have a guy like Chris to get that kind of inward knowledge of kind of like what's inside, like I'm fighter's mentality. But listen, give us your final thoughts on everything, and I see us out for the show.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. That was actually fantastic. There's nothing better than picking the brain of someone that's actually been in there and done it and gone through all of that. But look, yeah, it's an extremely exciting card to look forward to. Get the popcorn in, as you always say, get the popcorn in, get the beers in, get the Coca-Cola in, and you know, tune into this one. It's a fantastic card. There's a crowd back in. The atmosphere is going to be absolutely fantastic. Saturday night, can't wait. Yeah, great show. So again, as we always say, please like, subscribe, share, comment, you know, get in touch. We appreciate all the views we've had so far, and we're just really happy to be on a good flow now again, covering the different sports that we love. And yeah, another one in the can.
Perfect. Guys, as always, I'm available Twitter, Instagram, Cake Love Media, and Mr. Gavin is available on Twitter at KyleGavin23. We will see you on the next show. Take care and goodbye.
Good evening.